Imagine combining the rugged hardiness and relentless laying speed of a classic Japanese Coturnix quail with the massive chassis and deep breast of a white Texas jumbo. You get an unbeatable first-generation, robust birds with a feed consumption rate that's ridiculously low compared to their efficiency. The backyard producer makes million-dollar mental calculations. Proud and convinced, they've found the ultimate goldmine for homestead self-reliance. The initial numbers make you smile as you look at clean feeders, rising profits, and egg trays packed to the brim every single morning. The plan looks foolproof, and the abundance is real. However, behind this early success hides a fascinating biological enigma, a genetic lock designed by the industry with absolute premeditation. If you try to multiply these champions by falling into the same trap that 90% of backyard breeders do, you'll trigger an invisible countdown that could wipe out your entire investment in just 6 months of rearing. Today, you'll see the full breakdown of this imminent collapse. But more importantly, I'll reveal the exact cellular math that old master breeders used in secret to shatter corporate dependence and lock in this extraordinary yield in your flocks forever. Let's begin. To understand the birth of this biological engine, we've got to start from day one in the breeding pen, where this genetic clash is engineered. The project kicks off by strictly selecting the foundation stock from two completely opposite varieties. On one side, we take the classic Japanese quail, Coturnix japonica, a lightweight hyperactive bird adapted over centuries to lay eggs non-stop with a minimal expenditure of resources. On the other side, we introduce the white Texas jumbo, a heavy American line sculpted by industrial selection to pack on massive breast muscle and a heavy skeletal frame. By housing the dominant males of one variety with the selected hens of the other, we force two distant genetic codes to merge for the very first time. The result of this strategic mating is what livestock genetics calls an F1 hybrid, or first filial generation. When the chicks hatch, a remarkable biological reaction transforms the rules of the coop. Hybrid vigor, scientifically known as heterosis. By fusing these two pure, distant bloodlines, the genes line up in flawless uniformity, purifying the dominant high-production alleles and erasing recessive defects in a single step. That's where the project truly comes alive, giving birth to an intermediate specimen that pairs the high-speed laying of the Japanese line with the sheer body mass of the Texas jumbo. The first-generation chick breaks out of its shell with an insatiable metabolic engine, ready to devour the starter ration. These birds assimilate the crude protein of the feed concentrate at the highest cellular level, converting every ounce of mash into functional lean tissue. Their physiology runs at a speed that defies traditional livestock logic. They develop a broad skeletal frame capable of supporting an astonishing vertical muscle mass gain. They easily blow past the average weight of a standard Japanese quail without the clumsy, sluggish growth lag of the pure heavy Texas jumbo. When you observe their early development, you notice a biological growth spurt that transforms chicks into robust growers in a matter of weeks. The plumage buttons up fast, trapping core body heat and directing every ounce of energy toward muscle development. You're holding a bird with the agility of a rugged athlete and the thoracic capacity of a giant. This anatomy proves how crossbreeding optimizes the upper digestive system. The crop processes grain with sheer efficiency, pumping nutrients into the bloodstream without a single drop of waste. The intestinal villi are longer and denser, trapping essential amino acids that other birds dump straight into the brooder bedding. The long leg bones calcify with heavy strength, creating firm pillars that support a broad breast. This skeletal chassis allows for the development of large, highly efficient internal organs. The F1 generation's heart and lungs pump oxygenated blood to the muscles, guaranteeing optimal resistance during peak summer heat stress. The entire pen vibrates with endless energy, displaying birds ready to dominate any intensive rearing system. This biological chassis accelerates the onset of the reproductive stage with an unshakable rhythm. The flock hits a lightning-fast point of lay, breaking into production at exactly 42 days from hatch. There are no delays or false starts in the shed's nest boxes. The oviduct reaches full maturity in record time, perfectly prepared to sustain a yield that easily surpasses 300 eggs per hen a year. You'll witness a relentless production consistency that keeps your egg flats packed to the top every day. The secret lies in a feed conversion ratio that's completely off the charts. The gut squeezes the nutritional value out of the feed sack down to the very last particle. Every ounce of feed consumed translates directly into heavy breast meat in the males and uninterrupted laying cycles in the hens. This level of digestive efficiency achieves a financial miracle. You cut your daily operational feed costs in half without sacrificing final harvest weight. The hybrid's basal metabolism demands fewer maintenance calories, dedicating the entire nutritional surplus to yolk formation. The liver processes dietary lipids with a fluid efficiency that prevents the dreaded fatty liver syndrome, keeping the flock highly active throughout their productive cycle. The males show a capacity to transform crude protein into pectoral muscle that secures heavy carcasses on very low feed rations. The producer notices how the hoppers take longer to empty while the flock's average weight scales rapidly toward processing goals. This conversion allows you to maximize shed space and increase bird density without compromising your net profit. The math of the coop becomes your ally when feed intake drops and egg collection skyrockets. You've got an organic engine calibrated to generate non-stop returns. When you transition this flock into the cage systems, their behavior redefines your production charts. The reproductive tract of these hens runs like a Swiss watch, delivering pinpoint uniformity in every single morning collection. We're talking about eggs with an ideal commercial weight locked firmly into the perfect 0.4 to 0.5 ounce range. You won't find erratic size variations that ruin your packaging. The shell gland of the hybrid quail extracts calcium from the bloodstream with incredible efficiency, depositing thick layers over every cellular membrane. The final product is a perfectly calcified eggshell, glossy and rock-hard. This structural resilience eliminates microfractures as eggs roll down the sloped wire floors of the cage racks. You lose less product to breakages and guarantee an immaculate visual presentation. The entire flock hits a 95% peak, lay within weeks, and sustains that summit for months without displaying physical burnout. The breeder collects stacked flats day after day, observing a sea of identical eggs that makes commercial weighing and grading incredibly easy at the distribution center. Confinement stress, which usually shatters fragile purebred lines, doesn't faze these champions. Their stable nervous system allows them to completely ignore loud machinery noises outside the barn. They dedicate themselves exclusively to eating, drinking clean water, and dropping value into the egg trays. The oviduct maintains optimal lubrication, expelling clean eggs with no blood tracks or alarming prolapses. This reproductive health guarantees supreme interior egg quality. When you crack them open, you find a dense, deep orange yolk held high by a thick albumin. It's the raw output of an intact organic system. The vigor of this first generation builds an indestructible cellular wall against disease. Genetic heterosis shows up as unshakable health, gifting the flock a superior natural immunity against the opportunistic bacteria that lurk in brooder bedding. The macrophages in the F1's bloodstream patrol the body with a biological aggressiveness that neutralizes invading pathogens before they can colonize deep tissues. The breeder breathes easy, noticing a complete absence of respiratory snicks or lethargy in the aisles. This cellular shield protects their airways against the corrosive ammonia gases that tend to build up in winter. Out in the field, the crossbreed's hardiness solves the most persistent headaches of raising birds on galvanized wire floors. Pure heavy quails often suffer severe joint lesions from chronic contact with cold, hard metal. However, these hybrid offspring develop thick, heavily calloused foot pads. The keratin in their feet becomes dense, creating a protective sole that blocks infectious pododermatitis entirely. The birds walk and scratch on the wire mesh without developing open sores that compromise their welfare. This anatomical detail keeps baseline stress levels at an absolute minimum. You'll enjoy clean, vigorous flocks in constant motion that don't require expensive antibiotics or continuous supplementation. Their tight plumage repels excessive environmental humidity and acts as a thermal barrier against external parasites. The mortality rate in the facility drops next to zero, completely erasing those mysterious deaths that quietly drain your budget. The wild instinct of the Oriental variety, fused with the massive muscle frame of the American line, creates a bird capable of withstanding harsh temperature drops. It's a rugged piece of biological machinery engineered for maximum output. When it's time to process the males destined for culling, the carcass standardization confirms the raw power of this genetics. The batch displays an impeccable morphological symmetry across every single bird placed on the scale. The young males reach market weight fast, offering a dressing percentage that stands out for prominent breasts and meaty thighs. The meat harvested is exceptionally lean, with minimal superficial fat and incredibly high digestibility. You deliver clean, plump, attractive carcasses to your buyers that command top-dollar prices at any local market or high-end restaurant. At the same time, the economic salvage value of the spent hen at the end of her laying cycle is locked in. Unlike lightweight layers that finish their run as fragile skeletons, these females retain a remarkable muscle integrity despite months of high physiological demands. The entire batch is uniform in size and appearance, allowing you to process the cull flock as premium meat for hearty stews. You recover a massive chunk of your initial capital, securing immediate cash flow for your next flock rotation. The final sheets balance perfectly, costs plummet, and your feed silos last much longer than your original projections. Surrounded by this total abundance, the breeder's mind naturally starts planning the next logical move. You walk down the center aisle of your barn, looking out over cages overflowing with vitality. You analyze the wide profit margins and make a decision driven by pure homestead common sense. You decide to collect and incubate hundreds of fertile eggs from these hybrid champions. You're completely convinced you'll clone this success at zero cost. You think you've got absolute mastery over your flock's biology. However, the bedrock of Mendelian genetics is unforgiving, and it never spares an incautious breeder. The cellular trap has just been sprung inside your incubator trays, preparing to explode right before your eyes. When you return to the laying house 6 months after filling your cages with that flawless first generation, you're looking to perpetuate that abundance. You've collected and set the fertile eggs from your hybrid hens, crossed with dominant males from that very same hatch. You open the hatcher expecting to see an exact replica of that previous vigor, but the reality of the coop hits you with a brutal biological blow. Here, Mendelian segregation unleashes its full cellular fury, shattering your farm's uniformity in a single step. Genes that used to work in perfect harmony now shuffle chaotically, bringing to light the hidden recessives that the commercial industry engineered to stay hidden. The disaster manifests first at the feed troughs. The F2 birds inherit a fragmented anatomy that completely wrecks flock efficiency. You'll watch the chicks develop the voracious, insatiable appetite of their heavy jumbo ancestor, emptying the hoppers at an unsustainable pace. Yet, their internal physiology fails where it hurts most. As they mature, their reproductive tract turns out narrow, inefficient, and deficient, inherited from the wild line. You're dealing with a disproportionate animal that eats double the feed ration but dumps mediocre results in the trays, completely erasing the profit margins you projected for the season. High-cost feed vanishes down the digestive tracts of this second-generation batch, but the daily egg count drops to half without any explanation apparent to the untrained eye. The manure trays fill up with droppings rich in wasted protein, pointing to a terrible nutrient absorption rate. Your farm starts hemorrhaging cash fast. The breeder watches feed sacks empty, while fresh egg sales can't even cover basic operational costs, creating a continuous cash leak caused by a highly predictable genetic error. As time ticks by, the batch's behavior makes things even worse in the cages. Ovarian development in these juveniles grinds to a halt, forcing you to wait up to 60 days just to see the first egg. When they finally hit point of lay, the wire nest trays become a total lottery of irregular sizes, ruining any attempt at commercial grading. You'll find tiny, worthless pullet eggs mixed with monstrous double yolkers that demand a punishing physical effort from the birds. This inconsistency ruins your packaging presentation and drives away buyers who demand standardized sizes. These oversized eggs tear the hen's delicate internal tissues as they're forced out of the oviduct. The extreme pressure during lay causes severe vent prolapses, exposing raw mucous membranes to the air. This triggers urgent sanitary hazards in the wire cages, as the exposed tissue quickly infects upon contact with environmental feces. You lose young layers that were just starting their cycle, spiking your mortality rates to alert levels and forcing you to pull valuable birds from the daily production line. To top it off, genetic segregation completely shatters the plumage color pattern. Your incubators turn out a chaotic mix. Mottled birds, solid immaculate whites, dull grays, and dark pharaoh-tans, all crammed into the same cage module. Quails are highly territorial animals, incredibly sensitive to visual contrasts in their immediate surroundings. This sudden disparity of colors and sizes within a closed group triggers a deep hierarchy confusion. The individuals fail to recognize a social structure, and flock behavior turns erratic, threatening the physical integrity of the entire lot. The larger, darker birds begin to bully the lighter ones, unleashing vicious feather-pecking outbreaks. Confinement stress multiplies, and raw cannibalism rears its head in the aisles of your facility. White-feathered birds become walking targets, suffering open wounds on their backs that draw the relentless assault of the group. Once the first drop of blood stains the galvanized wire, predatory instincts take complete control, and the aggression becomes non-stop. Your peaceful laying house transforms into a chaotic space marked by violent livestock loss. Driven by this total flock collapse, many producers feel the water rising to their necks and assume genetic independence is an unattainable myth. The primary impulse is to empty the barn, sell the birds off as cheap cull meat, and walk back with your head bowed to buy expensive replacement stock from industrial hatcheries. You surrender your capital and return to being a dependent customer of the system. But here is where you must pause and remember the technical promise that sustains true breeders. To rescue your investment, the golden rule is to never multiply the chaos. You've got to apply the cellular math of the old master breeders to take absolute control of your bloodlines. The goal is to lock in dominant traits without falling into the trap of inbreeding. The answer isn't mating those disorganized offspring together. It's redirecting genetic force by utilizing the original purebred parent stock that started the cycle. This is the master key that hands you back the steering wheel. This time-tested field technique, known as backcrossing, consists of taking the absolute best hybrid hens from the F1 generation, those that demonstrated unshakable health, and breeding them backward to one of the original purebred foundation males. The direction of the blood depends entirely on the commercial goals of your homestead. If you're looking to lock in a massive output of premium eggs with rock-hard shells, you mate those hybrid hens back to a pure foundation male from the classic Japanese line. This backward leap instantly elevates the concentration of rugged-laying genes to 75%, filtering out the recessive noise and guaranteeing that the reproductive tract runs with high daily efficiency. On the flip side, if your market demands a heavy frame and superior meat yields in record time, the backcross must be directed toward a pure Texas jumbo male. By saturating the genetics with the heavy sire, you reinforce thoracic capacity and deep protein assimilation, securing massive, plump carcasses. This directional crossbreeding method breeds out biological defects and returns absolute uniformity to the flock without spending a single dime on outside purchases. But backcrossing alone won't guarantee continuous success if you don't apply a relentless selection pressure down the aisles of your barns. The time comes to execute a surgical culling of the house, a cold physical process where the producer evaluates their stock based on 3 indisputable markers of profitability. The first step requires manual fieldwork. You pick up each hen and measure her pelvic span using your own fingers. You need to feel a loose, 2-finger spread, about an inch between the pubic bones of the live quail. This bony separation confirms a wide, elastic pelvic span. A wide reproductive channel ensures the hen expels large eggs without suffering prolapses during peak lay periods. Closed-boned birds are culled without hesitation, guaranteeing that only hens with the proper anatomical chassis form the maternal base that'll transmit this mechanical resistance to your farm's future generations. The second biological marker is the progressive bleaching process visible on the bird's body. When an elite layer processes feed concentrate and builds dense yolks, she aggressively transfers natural pigments, known as xanthophylls, straight into the egg. When evaluating your best hens, you must look for a bleached, worn beak and a pale, moist cloaca. These physical signs confirm without a shadow of a doubt that the animal is investing her metabolic energy into packing your egg flats, and not into her own cosmetic appearance. If you spot a quail with a bright yellow beak and colorful legs deep into the laying season, you're holding a biological freeloader, a lazy thief stealing expensive feed without laying eggs. That bird is culled immediately and goes straight to the processing table. By purging these show-quality freeloaders, you purify your daily feed conversion ratio. The third indicator demands that you observe the flock's molting pattern with a sharp eye. Renewing plumage consumes massive amounts of structural protein, forcing birds to completely halt egg production. Poor layers are those that stop laying early in the season, molt at a slow pace, and rest for months while eating your grain for free. These early molters must face immediate culling. In sharp contrast, genuine production champions hold on to their ragged, worn, dirty plumage almost until the end of the year, executing a rapid, explosive molt before returning to work. They're organic machines engineered to work without pause. By mastering these biological markers, you advance from simple backcrossing into a structured line breeding program managed by controlled families in your coop. You group your exceptional birds into small, closed breeding pens, keeping a rigorous record of which male covers which hen. This manual control over matings blocks the advance of inbreeding depression, which usually wrecks neglected operations. Mismanaged consanguinity is a silent poison that shrinks egg size, weakens shells, and spikes embryonic mortality inside the incubator trays. By strategically rotating purebred males between isolated families, you keep flock vigor completely intact while concentrating desired genes into a perfect biological funnel. With every passing rotation, you achieve a solid state of homozygosity. The dominant alleles become identical, closing the genetic lock in your favor. The new batch hatches with an astonishing uniformity, demonstrating an unshakable hardiness against the challenges of your specific environment. As you consolidate this work, you stop acting as a perpetual buyer chained to corporate catalogs. You become the biological creator of your own poultry line, guaranteeing a real, sustainable, and profitable sovereignty for your homestead over the long haul. Mastering backcrossing and executing this surgical selection with a firm hand transforms your production unit into an entirely self-sufficient fortress. You stop gambling blindly against genetic inheritance to build a solid biological asset. Your homestead deserves strong, profitable birds, not a continuous liability devouring your daily gains. Let me know down in the comments which bloodline makes the most sense for your own setup. If this practical field advice brought some value to your vision, hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up so we can keep sharing poultry tactics. To your success, fellow breeder. Until next time.